Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities, and that's with the talent of the alpha, and it doesn't rhyme because it doesn't have to, because bear is, for the first time in many years, really cool. And if you have been following any one of our videos and any one of our talks about bears, you know Marcelian is a fan, but I have kind of been disappointed about bear ever since Legion, but that is changing in Dragonflight Alpha. And welcome to our series of coverages of all of the specs that are available in Alpha to test out with the new talents and the new spells and the new playstyles and pretty much everything new for you, so you can check them on our channel that you can see right now with your eyes. And if you like the content that we do, because we do daily videos right now, I cannot even talk, I'm so excited about fucking bear. Please consider checking our Patreon page. The link is down below. The Patreons are actually supporting us making this content because it would be particularly difficult to do it without their support. Not to mention, their contributions have made us be able to increase the quality of our production. You see lights there, and microphones and all of the laptop too. It was pretty much done with the help of the Patreon, so thank you very much. And if you, dear viewer, like the content and you want to see more and you want to give a little bit back, you know, and you want to support us a little bit more, check the link down below to our Patreon page. We have a couple of tiers with a couple of rewards that might suit your needs. Any contribution is more than appreciated, and we are really grateful. Thank you very much for considering supporting us in the content that we do. And let's actually check the bear. Now, we already covered the general Druid talent tree in one of our podcasts, initial podcasts, when the first talent trees were out, and Druid was one of the first classes to come out with the talent trees. The class tree is okay-ish. It's good. Listen, it's definitely split into like four major horizontal rows that focus on each individual spec's identity. Further left side is Feral, a little bit combined with Guardian, that goes a little bit combined with Resto, and all the way to the right you have Balance. If you go down the bear path, which you kind of have to do because you do need to unlock stuff like Thrash, like Swipe, like Iron Fur, and more important maybe anything, Skull Bash, which is the kick. And further down you do have Mighty Bash and stuff, and the more right you go, you get into some defensives and some utility and stuff like that, which is again really good. It's also a little bit weird because they are core mechanics of the bear that you normally get for free, but you kind of have to go into it at the expense of getting really interesting stuff like Typhoon or Ursoc Vortex, which are all the way to the fucking balance tree, so far to the right. God damn it, they are pretty far, but likely with the level 70, all the talents being available, we might be able to snag one or two of them depending on what you're willing to sacrifice in the bear tree. So it's maybe not that bad, but it does make you build the druid that you always dreamed of, because you can go a more healy-oriented druid with what you would have in past expansions as restoration affinity. Obviously, you can do with every little bit of affinity. You can actually get all of the bonuses if you would so desire. Move speed from cat form, thick hives or hides from bear, obviously healing and range abilities from balance. So it's pretty cool. This is subject to change. It's probably going to rely a lot on the content that you do, either being the dungeons or the raids. We only have access to 2 of the dungeons right now, and outside of getting the core things like Iron Fur and all of that, didn't really seem like I would benefit from anything outside of, I don't know, maybe a stampeding roar here and there, because the dungeons do have a bit of walking distance and I don't particularly mind, but you know, having movement speed is pretty great for that. And with that out of the way, we can actually check the bear tree. And in the bear tree, again, numbers aside, it's kind of hard to gauge the balance of the trees of the individual talents and the paths against each other. It's particularly better designed than Feral because it does have a lot more webbing, a lot more choices to be made. You can go from left to right a little bit more. There's more paths, essentially, which is good. Not as free-inducing like, let's say, Restoration Shaman is, because that's probably the best talent tree mechanically designed. So yeah, we have that. But there are 2 particular things I want to talk about when it comes to the bear talents. And if you look all the way to the right, which is probably what brings people's attention the most, is the Disco Bear, the Arcane Bear, the Galactic Guardian, which you might seen and might have missed in the last couple of patches while playing Bear. And you do have Galactic Guardian as a talent there. You also have a lot of Moonfire buffs and a lot of Arcane damage buffs for Bear, which is it weird? Is it new? Is it unconventional? Well, I don't know, but if you want to slap Moonfires in bear form, Moonfires are gonna slap, man, you know what I mean? If you thought Thrash was gonna be your biggest damage source, well, my friend, think again, because you're gonna slap some Moonfires left and right, and it's actually pretty fun. It's actually pretty fun. It does help the initial snap threat of bear, because we've talked about outside of, double legendaries and tier 6 that bears have now, bears fundamentally don't really have that much damage, and they struggle with aggro. You can remember the beginning of Shadowlands. If you have played a bear, you would struggle a little bit with aggro, and you would have to manually weave in Moonfires into your rotation to make sure you keep that. Now, with the Arcane, not only are you doing more damage, but the Moonfires blast, you can cleave Moonfires that actually hit 2 targets now if you go into the Arcane path, and they do a lot of damage. Obviously, Galactic Guardian is pretty self-explanatory. It's the Galactic Guardian that you know so far. Proc a free Moonfire, and the next Moonfire does triple damage and generates rage. The talent, even though you might be seeing footage of dungeons right now, that I did pick the talent was kind of wonky because it didn't really seem like it worked, but it did work. So in the first dungeon I picked it, it didn't seem to proc at all, but I think it proc passively and I just didn't notice it. But in the second dungeon I did notice it, so I don't know what's going on. It's probably some alpha bugs that are just gonna go away. It's initial stages of alpha, so and of course, with that being said, keep damage numbers with a pinch of salt in your mind and in your hearts, because things will probably change by the time the expansion is released. And maybe one of the biggest things that I actually haven't had the chance to test it yet because I've been interested in a bunch of other stuff is Legacy of the Sleeper, which was the Shadowlands legendary, but it's actually called Rage of the Sleeper. If you remember from Legion, one of the coolest things Bear's ever gotten is this cooldown that's all the way to the bottom right. It's a capstone and, makes you tanky and stuff, but what's more important is that you are immune to empowering effects. So if you have a raid fight where everybody gets knocked away off in the air, further on the ground, in the pits, in the fire, or everything, that's not gonna happen to you. This is a core mechanic of what can make a tank fucking awesome, is you slap this and you don't give a fuck. Not giving a fuck is the best thing that has come to tanks in 2022 by Flame. And of course, if you go to the left-hand side, you have a different side of the build, which is actually what I have been waiting to see for Bear in years. There's a bunch of good things that are happening on the left-hand side of the tree. I don't know exactly how balanced they are compared to the Arcane. It looks like Arcane might still do more damage. However, there are at least 2 to 3 things that are really done well that make me want to actually play Bear, as opposed to the last 2 expansions, which have kind of led me a little bit cold when it comes to Bear love. First of all, it's Maul. Maul has been pretty much a dead ability for years. I mean, sure, you can press it so you don't cap on Rage. If you don't need the Iron Fur to survive, you can just slap Maul, sure. But outside of that, Maul has been like a wet noodle, like a silly, sad cloth that you just slap people with and they're like, what are you doing, man? Come on, dude, seriously? But now, Maul can fucking pump. There's a bunch of talents that increase Maul damage and effectiveness, but the 2 that actually are really cool is Tooth and Claw, which I think we have now on live as well, but it's a little bit underwhelming and it does have a strong competition with the other options on the row. And I think it's a vicious cycle. Whenever you mangle, your next Maul does more damage. Whenever you Maul, your next mangle does more damage, which is a neat interaction that it sounds very simple on paper, but it's actually really good because once you do buff Maul with the vicious cycles and the Tooth and Claw procs, Maul will hit like a fucking truck. Obviously, it's single target, but at least from all the DPSers that I've been able to play in the alpha right now, comparing that tank damage, that is a lot of damage. A lot of damage that, Maul does way more damage than Mangle. And that shouldn't necessarily be surprising because it is a consumer, but it hasn't really been an option to play in your rotation for years, and that actually changes. And it also changes with one more talent that affects Thrash as well, and this can segue into our Thrash discussion, and that's Ursoc's Fury. Remember, the legendary that you have right now, which I think is just Ursoc's Fury in the talents right now, whenever you Thrash and Maul, or Maul, whatever, 75% of the damage dealt by either of the abilities turns into an Absorb Shield. And if you do play, let's say, in a boss fight, then you probably will keep Thrash, but since you're gonna be playing the left-hand side of the tree, and you do have big Maul fuels, Maul will actually be better to press in single target, and probably on magic intense fights, by talking to some big bear brains and actually seeing it for myself in, I think it was Neltharis, where there's like a lot of fire damage. It's really good because 75% of that damage is converted into an absorb shield, and Maul hits pretty hard. Not only do you do damage, but you also absorb magic damage, which actually obviously Ironfur doesn't really help with, and that's really cool. And I did mention Ursoc's Fury and Thrash, and yes, you do have a Thrash build, which is pretty much what you're gonna get if you do play the Maul build. So let's say it's like a physical bleed type build, not an arcane that you have on the other side of the tree. And if you have been playing Bear in the last couple of expansions, you know that there were some legendaries and some options and some spells that were really cool for Thrash, but you never really had all of them, but now you do. The most important one is being Ursoc's Fury Remembered, which we have now. We have the range for Thrash increased, which is pretty nuts. We have the Thrash has a chance to proc another Thrash, and also Thrash damage, which is really, really amazing, and this makes Thrash a fucking king. And obviously with Berserk, and if you take the right talents, Thrash has no cooldown. So you are the immortal bear that you've always dreamed of, and this time you don't need a covenant for it or a specific legendary for it. You just build your Thrash build and you slap. And this has been fun. This is what I've been talking about, that Bear needed some more interactions between each spells and make spells a little bit more relevant, so you don't turn into one button degenerate playstyle that we have now in Shadowlands, where you just thrash like a maniac for like 2 hours and things die and you don't. But now that's different and it's really cool, and obviously there are a lot more options with Bear that we can test out. We don't have level 70 templates to test all the talents and full talent builds, but what we've been able to test so far were pretty fucking amazing. I am hyped for Bear. I don't know if I'm gonna main it, but I will definitely want to play it as an alt, and I haven't felt like this since Legion, and that's saying something, man. That's saying something for the hope of bears everywhere. Everywhere where you look, you can be a bear, a better bear. So if you're maining a bear now and you want to main a bear in Dragonflight, you're gonna have so much more fun. And the fact that you can have these two very diverse builds, and of course with whatever you intermingle in the middle, is really amazing. And obviously in the middle you have stuff like Incarnation and Convoke, that you can, all of the Berserks converge into one, and you become a big bear. Now, because of the talents being distributed the way they are, and because we don't have access to all of the points, I couldn't actually test a cohesive build that obviously takes, let's say, a Thrash focus build and Incarn, or an Arcane focus build and Incarn, because you probably will be able to take those types of builds once you're level 70. But I cannot really tell, and just going pure Incarn is a little bit boring, right? But Bear can actually be fun in Dragonflight, and this is the quick roundup on Bear. Probably we're gonna see a lot more testing and a lot more tuning in the near future. There's I think one talent that's not yet implemented yet, and there are still a couple of bugs to air out until beta becomes available, and hopefully you guys get in as well. So all in all, it's exciting if you're a bear main, and if you want to be in Dragonflight Alpha, a big bear. It's something that I haven't said in years, so yeah. Hope you enjoyed the video. Again, consider becoming our Patreon if you like to see these videos and you want to support us a little bit back. The link is down below, like I mentioned before, and thank you all of the existing patrons for supporting our content and making everything possible. You guys rock. It's really cool to have you on the team. Well, this is it. We have, what time it is? It's time to shoot another video. Let's go.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.